So today we're going to talk about nature's principle of adaptability. And quite simply it states that every living thing has the power to live a comfortable and fulfilling life. Every living thing, not just human beings, every living thing. And as we look around throughout nature, we see that every living thing pretty much does that. From the birds and the bees, the trees, the plants, the flowers, they all live what we seem to think is a comfortable and fulfilling life. There doesn't seem to be much suffering going on, except in that 3% of all life, which is human beings. And the greatest degree of misery and suffering that we experience is our result in not adapting to that which has taken place in our life that is unchangeable. You know, since the beginning of time, and I love to tell this story, so if you've heard it before, please excuse me, but at the Big Bang, there was 100 million miles of cosmic ash everywhere, and they're broken down into these little bits called quarks. And the quarks were of two different kinds. They were of a positive charge, and they were of a negative charge. Now, in order for these quarks to exist, they had to join together in groups of three. And the groups of three had to be two negatives and a positive, or two positives and a negative. It couldn't be three negatives or three positives. They had to do this in order to continue to exist, in order to form atoms, in order to form molecules, cells, and us. So there was some sort of underlying intelligence within them and that allowed them to do this. They came together in those groups of three, specifically designed with that order, and this all happened in less than 1 second. Now, since that time, every living thing has adapted to the way life is, adapted to the laws of the universe, the principles of nature, and that has allowed life to continue to evolve from that sea of cosmic dust to us sitting here today. Very sophisticated, intellectual life forms that can contemplate the universe which gave birth to us. And it's all a result of adapting. Those species that didn't adapt soon became extinct. Now, in our lifetime, each and every one of us have seen so many technological changes and advancements in medicine that we've been called on to adapt to a whole different way of life than what we once knew. I was first married in the 60s, and my wife at that time came from a very traditional family. The role of a woman was very defined in a traditional way. She took on the role of a woman and a wife from her mother, who got it from her grandmother, who got it from her great-grandmother. And the expectations put on the wife and the woman at that time were pretty cut and dried. Well, when I got married the second time in the 90s, it was a whole different age. I mean, from the 60s to the 90s, we had Gloria Steinem, we had women's liberation, we had the progression of equality in women's rights. And so in that 30-year period, when I got married again, I found myself in a whole different world because my wife had thrown to the wind in the traditional role of a housewife and a woman. And all of a sudden, I found myself involved in responsibilities that at one time would have been called women's work. But I had to share in it. And one of those responsibilities was the laundry. She would do the laundry one week, I would do the laundry the next. My first attempt at doing the laundry was a disaster. I went to the laundry room, just dumped everything into the washing machine, ran it through the cycle, dried it, and that met with a horrified look on my wife's face because everything came out kind of grayish and purplish and drab. And she said that's because I didn't follow this technique, which is called separating the darks from the lights. I adapted to that. I can do that. The next time it's my turn to do the laundry, I go down to the laundry room. I'm separating the darks from the lights, and all of a sudden I come across a cotton top of my wife's that's black and white stripe. What do you do? Now, the first point of this lesson is every problem has a solution, and if there isn't a solution, it isn't a problem. And so I knew there was a solution to this. The second point is, in the book of Matthew, Jesus says, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you shall find. So I sat there on a little stool in the laundry room. For some reason, I didn't want to go ask my wife for the solution. I don't know why. It's like asking instructions when you're out lost in the road. So I sat there and I wondered, what is the solution to this? And I began to look around the laundry room to seek something out that would help me solve this problem. And then there on the wall was a Christmas gift that Ginny Zelasnik gave me. It's one of those little vacuum cleaners called a dustbuster. And on the shelf there's a can of Lysol. So I dry cleaned that garment. And she never knew the difference. Now, I only tell you this story because there's 3 or 4 different forms of adaptation in there that I had to go through. And each and every one of us does that every day of our life. We live in a changing world. Life is the changing process. It never, ever stops. And many of those changes that take place are way beyond our control. The seasonal changes, the weather, nature changes. We see all sorts of different things that take place in our life that we have no control over, and we're expected to adapt to them. Each and every one of us individually changes on a daily basis. In 1 year, every single cell in your body is replaced. Now just let that sink in for a little bit. Every single cell in your body is replaced, and that means that the body you're sitting with here today didn't exist 1 year ago. You're sitting in the brand new 2010 model. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, why does it look the same? And it doesn't. It looks 1 year older. And so we have to realize that even the bodies change, and the new cells that are replacing the old cells inherit the memory of the old cells, and so we stay pretty much the same way that we've always been. Now, the same thing holds true in regards to our mental and our emotional being. You are not the same person emotionally that you were a year ago. Every single thing that happened to you in the last year has affected the way you perceive life. You perceive life in a different way. And sometimes it's due to a change that was tragic in nature, perhaps a loss, an upset, a setback, or it might have been great fortune. It might have been an aha moment with new wisdom. Whatever it is, you're sitting here today a brand new person than you were a year ago with an outlook on life that is totally different. Now, what happens is we live in a world of change, and there are 2 different types of change. There's a change that is voluntary, that we initiate to benefit ourselves or others. And we step forth and we make a change to benefit our health, or to serve the community, or to do something. There's those voluntary changes that we initiate, we engage in, and there's a beneficial aspect to them. But then there's the other change, which are the involuntary changes. And the involuntary changes, in many cases, we don't want to happen. We can't see a purpose for them. And so we resist them, and we struggle with them, and we do everything we can to either run away from them or to get them away from us. And yet it is a permanent aspect of life that is unchangeable. The vast majority of our worry, our fear, our anxiety, the stress levels that we experience is due to those unchangeable things that take place in our life that we cannot accept, that we continue to wrestle with, fight with, or begrudgingly go forward with resentment. Now, if something's happened that cannot be changed, to struggle with it, and to be resentful for it, and to be angry towards it, only poisons the soul and the body. It is fighting life. Life becomes the enemy. And what we focus on, as we know, expands. So if we're looking at something as it is bad, it shouldn't have happened, I can't accept this, that is going to continue to grow within us, and we're going to find other aspects of life that we look at in the same way.